All right, welcome back to Practice Security. My name is Matt Johnston. I greatly appreciate you joining me for a quick video, hopefully a quick video, explaining some more of the mythology and deception around AI. I want to talk about some of the immediate dangers of the technology that are presented to us just in the nature of itself, technology itself, and the means of that presentation. There's a lot of what's called spell casting involved in AI, and a lot of that is informed by our own science fiction mythology that is built up over decades and decades as we've explored the concept of artificial intelligence in our kind of collective storytelling narrative as a culture and as a civilization. We've explored the ideas of what it would be like if computers could be as intelligent as we are, and if we could embody that intelligence in physical form in an interactive way. We've explored that for a long, long time as a culture, while the technology has been also experimented with and built out over that same timeline. All of that actually goes back to the 1940s. I don't want to get into that story too much here, but I speak quite a bit about that in the article that and podcast that I've published called "The Developing Story of AI." Walk you through a timeline of development and also that bifurcation of stories. There is the technological story that has been progressing since the 1940s around AI, and there's also the science fiction or mythology narrative that's been progressing. And along with that science fiction narrative, there's also quite a bit of moral speculation and moral evaluation that's happened, and also some metaphysical and some theological discoveries and concerns that have been written about. And I talk about that a lot about that in the presentation I just mentioned. But what I want to talk about in this video is one of the great deceptions of AI that is presented to you right from the start, and it feeds on those assumptions from our mythology, and it is part of the spell casting of AI, is part of the allure of the technology that gets us hooked and gets us believing that the technology can be used for things that it was never designed to be used for. And I want to help kind of unpack that myth in this episode. But whenever you approach a chatbot for any of the major AI providers, whether it's Grok or ChatGPT or Gemini or any of them, they pretty much all give you the same basic presentation at the outset. And that is a prompt, a text box that you can either type into or you can speak into, that kind of is provocative in nature. It says, "Ask me anything." That is the prompt that you are given, and there's variations on the wording there. I don't have them up in front of me for example, but in our introduction to AI presentation, I show you what each of the prompts looks like, and if you want to, you can take a few minutes to look at that yourself. But that premise, regardless of how it's worded, they all present to you right away through the lens of deception with that prompt. That prompt says, "Ask me anything." So what? How do we respond to that prompt ourselves? How do we take that and internalize it, and then formulate how we're going to interact with the chatbot, with the AI? Well, by claiming that you can ask it anything, and by coming by being the face of our mythology, of our science fiction mythology around artificial intelligence, and seeing the ways that it has been marketed to us as a technology by the revolutionaries like Elon Musk and Sam Altman and others, right away I think our natural assumption is that if AI is saying, "Ask me anything," then it is capable of answering any question. And therefore, it probably has, I don't think probably, I think we just make this assumption. We assume that it therefore has access to all knowledge and the ability to derive an answer, the factual, perfect answer from all knowledge. In the most efficient way possible. And so, whatever we're going to receive from the prompt back as its answer is going to be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, based on the totality of knowledge of the human story, and is very, very fast. And this is part of the deception right out the gate with the technology. It cannot know everything. It does not know everything, and it is not designed to give you the truth. And let's talk about that a little bit. So first of all, artificial intelligence, the large language models that you and I interface with today, Grok, ChatGPT, Gemini, etc., they are not all knowing. They do not have access to all human information and all human understanding and all human experience, all human knowledge. They have access to, they're basically models that have been trained and have been bundled with layers and layers of complex relationship management and algorithms that help them do self learning, self deep learning. And what that means is when they encounter some body of data, some body of text, or some object, whether it's an image or an audio file or a document or a streaming set of information that they receive, like text, what the deep learning algorithms do is they basically review all of that object, that text array or that image file or whatever, and they parse through it. So they kind of scan through it, and they're coded with algorithms that help them derive an understanding of what that object represents, up of what that object is composed of and what it is made up of and what it overall represents, and how the AI neural network should understand whatever that particular object is that it is examining. And it from that it derives some insights. It's really driven by pattern recognition, finding patterns, and elevating patterns based on what the algorithms have taught it to pay attention to. In fact, the LLM architecture that's used today, the transformer architecture, is based on the premise that the most important thing that you need to do for deep learning is train the machines what to pay attention to. And I've experienced this firsthand working with the data analytics space for professionally for over 2 decades. When you're training a data model for any sort of data analytics, if you're doing machine learning training, you have to tell the model what to pay attention to. This is super important. And so the algorithms that make up the knowledge system and the understanding of the chatbots that you and I are interfacing with, they're made up of algorithms that teach the code what to pay attention to within the information that it has access to in order to discover meaning and identify meaning and patterns and relationships from among the text. And that's fundamentally what it's going to use in order to answer your prompt or satisfy your prompt. You could think of it as like a summarization effort. It is scanning through whatever the body of knowledge is that you've referenced or that it thinks it needs to reference in order to answer your question, deriving some highlights, summaries, some thematical summaries of the information, and it's going to use that in order to give you the prompt. This is both how Gen AI works as well as just regular um, AI. They both work the same thing. So if you're generating an image file or you're generating text like a story or you're generating an audio file, they all fundamentally work on the same premise of looking at whatever it is you've referenced, or invoked via your reference, finding the patterns and summarizations of that, and then presenting that back to you in a predictive way that tries to answer your question. And so hopefully right away you can see a couple problems here. First of all, if the chat model doesn't have access to the most important information that's going to actually answer your question, then it won't be able to answer your question with truth. Or if the actual truth, the wisdom, the knowledge, the factual information that is actually the true answer to your question, if it is not within the algorithm's scope of what it's supposed to pay attention to, or if it misses that pattern, or if it is a subtle pattern that doesn't rise to the top in terms of all the patterns that the machine has learned by examining all the data set, then it's going to miss the truth. It's going to miss the facts and present to you the wrong outcomes. And also, you need to recognize and understand that the machines, the LLMs of today, and the machine learning process that they go through, is largely based on the digitized body of knowledge that is popular on the internet today. So it is a representation of the human story, human history, human expression that is current and modern. And right away, I think you will know, if you're a morally inclined person, you'll know that the modern culture of the West today is not necessarily representative of truth, of facts, of actual truth. In fact, in our modern era, we're told that truth is relative, that truth is in the eye of the beholder, that truth is whatever you have experienced and you have decided is true. And it is fungible and changeable and adaptable and all that. And so we live in a context, in a society, in a world that says that there is no truth, but there are patterns that it can discern by looking at our expressions and looking at the knowledge systems that are available to it via the public internet. And then from that, it's going to derive some basic understanding that it thinks is what is the best match to answer your prompt. And so if you're asking the AI chatbots to answer a specific question, unless the AI bots have access to all the pertinent information in digitized form and have algorithms that perfectly derive understanding from that and pay attention to the right factual and true things, and can compute all of that in its neural network in the appropriate way. Those are all the assumptions that you're making about your question. And if the machines can do all those things perfectly well, then yeah, you'll get a true and factual and complete output from the machines. But the reality is none of those things are true, or you should not assume any of those things to be true. And therefore, going back to my original premise, that prompt, that provocative prompt of ask me anything, it's a lure of deception, because the machine behind the scenes cannot answer anything with absolute precision and with absolute truth. So take into consideration this other angle on this issue. Um, in terms of how the patterns of the LLMs are designed to find and elevate themes. Again, they're looking for patterns. They're designed to find relationships within the data and elevate those relationships. And so if the primary narrative of their information source has within it patterns that are contrary to the truth, or it has in it the dominant story or the dominant attributes of the narrative that the AI is going to in order to help answer your question, is things that are contrary to the truth. They're lies, they're not true, they're popular opinions, they're not facts. Then the AI bot is only going to be able to derive from that knowledge source things that are not true. And so it's going to present to you things that are not true as if they are fact. And so there's a few things you need to know about that provocative prompt. Ask me anything. One, it doesn't have access to all information to be able to answer your question to begin with. Two, in order to answer that question, it is building an answer based on the knowledge system it has, but also the algorithms and what it's been trained to decide as truth. And three, it has no concept of wisdom. Now, we can debate that because there are algorithms that you can code that try to mimic human wisdom, but again, that is a form of mimicry that has a bunch of assumptions behind it. It assumes that you are elevating the right human history into the machines and the bots, and the true truth is being weighted more than other philosophies and other attempts to answer questions that may not be true. So, an example of this: the AI revolutionaries, Elon Musk, Sam Altman, and others, they believe that with this technology, they can merge together all of the ideologies and religions of the world, all the theories that humanity has, all the questions that we've posed, all the theories that we have um, put forward to explain life, the universe, meaning, and all of it, the nature and origins of humanity and our purpose and all of that. They believe that they can take all of that quote wisdom, or that all of that philosophical searching and religious searching and attempts to describe philosophical things, metaphysical things. They believe that they can take all of that knowledge and do that pattern recognition across all of that to derive some fundamental truths, or to derive what are the most true things, and perhaps to discover some new things that we didn't previously know by merging all of this information together in order to come up with some basically a new religion. In fact, Elon Musk has talked about this openly, about how he sees AI as one of the roles of AI is going to be to break through all the mythologies and religious systems and ideologies of humans that we've held throughout the entirety of our existence, to break through all of that and finally come to some new level of understanding, some deeper level of mythology or philosophy or religion, if you will. And so from this tool, he hopes to derive the answers to all of our questions. But to derive that, the AI models, again, they're taking access to what information they have, they're merging it together, they're looking at relationships across that data set, they're looking for patterns, they're looking for summaries, themes that stand out, they're looking for what they've been trained to pay attention to, and that's what they're going to elevate to you as the answer to your questions. That's what they're going to elevate to you as truth and fact, but it may not be at all. If you take an example, I'll give you another example to hopefully help solidify all this. If you take a cup of pure water and you dump a cup, let's say it's 1 cup of water, and you dump 1 cup of sand into that water and you mix it all up. So there's sand all throughout the water. And then you sample the sand and you find out what are the trends and normal things about this water. You will find in all those samples that sand exists. And you will elevate the normal pattern or normal attribute of water is to be sandy. And then if you try to drink that normalized sandy water as good for you, you will be drinking what is effectively poison. And that is the main danger of the data models and the systems of deep learning that we're faced with. In the data sciences world, we say junk in, junk out. If you put junk into your data model and you tell the model to pay attention to things that it shouldn't be paying attention to, or the indicators of attention grab hold of the wrong things, then you're going to get junk out as a net result. And so that's what's really important to understand about these chatbots. Unless you tell it to specifically reference a specific body of work as the knowledge source that it needs to learn from or consider the question from, and assuming that it actually has access to that information source, unless you bind it to that very carefully, and you have no control over the algorithms, so you have no ability to actually do that. But unless you bind it to a specific body of knowledge and keep it from generating some new insights that aren't actually there, and then ask it to do the summarization work and tell you what the truth is, that's the only way you can actually get the truth out of these models. And that's fundamentally not what they're designed for. In fact, the hope is that they will be used for something completely different. So that's what I want to cover in this, hopefully, myth busting series on the dangers of AI. Right at the outset, there is a deep deception at the very prompt about the nature of the technology itself and what you can use it for. And I hope you can see how this is a great danger to us. We should not trust that the systems, the chatbots, are all knowing, all powerful, all wise, all discerning. They are not. You know that in a world of lies, truth is not popular. The truth is not the dominant pattern. The truth is not the story that elevates to the surface. Oftentimes, the story that elevates to the surface is whatever the popular culture wants to choose to believe. It is often politically swayed and motivated. It is often culturally motivated. It is often selfishly motivated. It is influenced by all sorts of powers that may be. And this is the context of humanity that AI is designed to train off of and feed off of. So be very, very careful in what you use AI for, and don't divest knowledge seeking and truth seeking to these tools, even if you're doing it in the nature of good intent and only citing certain information sources. You just can't trust it. There is great deception in this technology from the outset. All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate your time and your attention. We're going to call it quits there at this next attempt at busting some of the myths about AI. I'm Matt Johnston on behalf of Practice Security. I thank you very much.